everyone, and welcome back to the channel for Knox's Regiment of Artillery. Today we are going to talk a little bit about the different types of ammunition that artillery fired during the course of the American Revolution. Now, there are really three types of guns that would have been primarily used. Now, first we have our field pieces, typically what we consider a cannon during the war. Those cannons are usually direct fire weapons, meaning if you can see it, you are going to point and shoot at it. Those types of cannons fire a few different types of ammunition. One of those types of ammunition is your solid cannonball. Now, this cannon you see behind me is a 3-pounder cannon, meaning it fires a 3-pound cannonball. These cannonballs are going to be used primarily in field combat, where you are not necessarily putting the round directly through a line of infantry, but you are trying to skip these rounds into your infantry lines. You would also use these solid cannonballs against fortifications. You're battering down walls, especially with larger size, larger caliber guns. Now, these cannons, being field guns, also could switch to different types of ammunition, primarily for anti-personnel, anti-infantry ammunition. One of the more famous types of anti-personnel ammunition during this time period are what we would call grape shots, canister, or what they also called case shot in the time period. Both of these types of ammunition would be filled with either iron ball bearings or lead musket balls. And the idea being is that when the cannon goes off, it will shred either the fabric casing on the outside of the grape shot or the tin casing on the outside of the canister. This would then spray those iron ball bearings or the lead musket balls across the battlefield like a giant shotgun. This is incredibly effective and incredibly deadly for infantry soldiers on the battlefield, which is primarily what these smaller 3-pounder cannons are going to be used for. They advance forward with your infantry soldiers. They can be used to cut large gaps amongst your enemy's lines. Here's a little bit of a cutaway of what would have been on the inside of one of those case shots or canister rounds, with the iron ball bearings on the inside, your tin can on the outside, and it would have been packed with sawdust to keep those all intact together on the inside of those guns. Now, the other thing about how this ammunition was used in the time period is that you had two different ways of loading this ammunition into a gun. Now, you have what was called either fixed shot or unfixed shot, meaning you have either just a solid cannonball that will be put down the muzzle of the gun, usually with a separate cartridge of gunpowder, either made of flannel or of paper. Both of those will be ground down separately into the gun. Or to speed up your loading process, you would have what's called fixed ammunition, meaning you have your solid cannonball attached to a wooden bowl called a sabot that would have been attached to some banding that went around the cannonball to keep it all together. And then on the back of the sabot, you would have had a powder satchel, a powder flannel bag, or a paper cartridge. All of that attached together, so you only have to ram it down the barrel once, and that speeds up your loading process substantially. Now, our other type of artillery during the American Revolution, we would have two indirect fire types of artillery. The first one is something called a howitzer. A howitzer was essentially a mixture that could fire indirect up and over, arcing to your enemy, or could be fired direct line towards your enemy in an open field. Now, opposed to the howitzer is also a mortar. A mortar is specifically indirect fire. Both mortars and howitzers fired very similar types of ammunition. These are the types of artillery that can fire exploding cannonballs. Now, typically what you would have is a cannonball that has been hollowed out on the inside, filled with a powder charge, and then as an artillerist, you had to be very good at mathematical equations. You would calculate how long you wanted your fuse and your cannonball to burn. This fuse you see right here is a little bit of reed that has been filled with a very specific concoction of gunpowder that would burn slowly. You would cut this down to second-long increments, place it into the top of your cannonball, and when it's fired, that fuse would burn. And if you've done your calculations correctly, it would explode downrange exactly where you want it to go off. Now, this type of ammunition could be used in open field combat. You get examples of howitzers being ordered to fire with smaller charges of gunpowder in the tube of the gun, causing this round to roll across the ground and explode amongst the feet of infantry soldiers across the field. You would also lob these into enemy fortifications with a mortar. So that would say thank you all for joining us. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you back here next time at Knox's Regiment of Artillery.